What is going on, you amazing people? My name is Daniel Somerville, and I wanted to pop on here and I just wanted to share about the last 7 years of my life and the crazy journey, the crazy healing journey, how multidimensional, how profound it's been. And I just wanted to share my journey with you guys over the last number of years. I haven't really shared my whole journey from start to finish before, and I wanted to pop on in the context of healing, in the context of the journey in health. And see, when it comes to the topic of health, it's multidimensional. So we've got physical health, we've got our body and coming into alignment with physical health in our temple. We have mental health, we have emotional health, we have certain self-sabotage loops and bondage cycles that we can get into. We have spiritual health, right? We have, what are we coming into alignment with from our frequency? Being in a low frequency, being in a high frequency, all of these different things, different states of being. And we truthfully at the core are a spirit body mind complex. Okay, we are a tripartite being. In the world, we're not really taught that. We just think that we're a body and a mind, a separate self going through the world that's separate from anything else, separate from God, separate from anything bigger, really. And so that aloneness kind of puts us into survival mode, and we need to attach to external things in order to fulfill ourselves internally. Whereas in religion, we're kind of hyper spiritualized. The pendulum swings on the other side, and it's like it's all about God. It's all about this external sky god, this deity that's outside of yourself that you must believe in, and the world is bad, and so you push off your needs and you neglect your body and you don't focus on things like that, but you just dive into spiritual practices like prayer and meditation and maybe reading spiritual books like the Bible and things like that. And so there's these two ditches that we can fall into, and I've walked through both of these ditches. I've walked through the mindsets of both of these ditches over the last 7 years, and I just wanted to share about my journey and kind of coming back to Christ, going through a level of Christian deconstruction, going through crazy detox symptoms in my body that have that really affected my mental state, that really affected my emotional state and capacity. I dealt with a ton of different stuff, and I just want to begin to speak about this stuff openly in the hopes that it will help other people and that I can help other people along their journey that may be dealing with things like this, similar things, or things that come up through the journey of getting healthier, of growing, of awakening into greater levels of consciousness, of deconstructing religious paradigms which no longer serve us, that are rooted in fear and separation. So I just wanted to come on and I wanted to share some of my journey because it's time to share. It's time for me to come on and share and speak openly about what I've been through and the things that have happened in order to be able to give back. So about so I won't go all the way back, but essentially, we all grow up in this world. Unless we grew up with enlightened parents and enlightened communities that were in the high vibrations of love and peace and joy and connection and living in harmony all of the time, without any issues, which I don't think that's the case for anyone in this world. We all grew up with some shit. We all grew up with some childhood programming of I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, or different egoic constructs where we began to believe that we were way better than other people and got levels of pride, or maybe we were manipulated and there's frustration and anger underneath the surface. For me, I grew up with certain patterns of feeling unworthy and inadequate for certain things. And I didn't realize it, but it was an unconscious belief. And so in my life, I developed a real performance-based mentality. Work hard, play hard. You're only as good as your last job. These were kind of mentalities and ideals that were programmed into me from a young age, which were good on the surface because I would always work really hard, and I became the best long distance runner and one of the best high level soccer player. For my age group in my city that I grew up in, and it was just a journey of always diving into the depth and doing the best that I could in everything that I did in regards to things that I was passionate about. Well, that might be good for healthy things, but when it comes to partying and different stuff, and so when I was introduced to partying in high school, that's exactly what it became to me. High school. So I dove deep into high school, going through that time in my life, peer pressure, wanting to fit in, wanting to be connected, wanting to find my place in the world. And I didn't have a connection to who I truly was. And so that underneath that, I didn't really have it. I had a connection to God when I was younger, but I didn't have it flowing through in that time in my life. It was severed from me. I lost my greater connection. And so I got into alcohol and drugs. And so fast forward 10 years of this party phase in my life, through my teens into my early 20, I ended up getting into recovery. I kind of took the dump truck all the way to the dump. I had some pretty intense experiences and close calls with addiction, and just being with the wrong people in the wrong places. And looking back, God's hand was on me the whole time, guiding me, protecting me, and nothing too severe happened. However, at the end of that experience, I started to go to AA, and I started to connect back with spirituality, and I started to hang out with spiritual people, and I got into a bunch of different spiritual modalities, and I was reintroduced to meditation and prayer. And then I had a bunch of Christians on this side inviting me to Bible studies and stuff like that. And so I started to have this mixture of spiritual practices, and this was back in 2018. So I kind of began to have this spiritual awakening. No, not 2018, sorry, 2012 was the original. Another spiritual awakening and deconstruction happened in 2018. Those are the two big years. But 2012, and I believe a lot of people began to have a spiritual awakening around this time in regards to what this world actually is and what is happening here. And so for me, I began to sober up. It was like God touched a button, and it was like, Kate, now it's your time. And it was like I began to awaken, and my heart was drawn into all of these different spiritual modalities, from the Lakota tribe sweat lodges to the New Age and chakra and meditations. And I was having meditations where I would be like astral projection type thing out in the cosmos in my consciousness, and I would be like so tapped in and so tuned in to the quantum field that like I knew somebody who was going to call me. And I'd be in meditation, I'd be like, my phone's going to ring in 3, 2, 1, and then my phone would ring. And so telepathically and just in my field, I was really harmonically tuned into the spirit realm at that time, but I was void of Christ. I was void of this other spiritual tradition that I'd grown up with, being raised in a Baptist church, Christianity. And so all these Christians started coming around me and inviting me into different things. And so I started to get back in. And so long story short, I ended up getting baptized and filled with the Holy Spirit. And it was an awesome year and a great experience. I renounced and repented and burned all the New Age stuff that was actually so instrumental in helping me heal and clean up my life. But I was told that all that stuff was demonic. And so I burned it all like a good Christian, and I went into the church. And for the next few years, from 2014, 15, 16, 17, I went to a bunch of different churches. And so I started off more conservative. We were at an Alliance church, and then it's like I grew in that. That wasn't crazy enough. We got to some Pentecostal churches that were in alignment with the Bethel Supernatural School, and I became a student at this Bethel Supernatural School offshoot, really hungry for God, just diving in. And my consciousness went up a whole nother level, where I began to realize and began to harness and learn some of these spiritual gifts that I had, that, being prophetic and being able to see people's destinies and speak words of knowledge and prophesy over their life. And I just had this powerful time with God in that time, where I was growing in the things of the Spirit. I was reading my Bible, and I was doing all the Christian things. And then during that school year, it was a very profound time, because what ended up happening is I was led onto an extended water fast. I'd never fasted on water before. I'd never fasted at all. But I was seeking very deeply to go after the things of the Spirit. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I was praying big prayers like, Jesus, I want to become just like you. God, do whatever it takes to make me just like Jesus. God, do whatever it takes, deconstruct my life of anything that is not of you. God, I want to bring unity and global salvation, and all of these lofty prayers that were deep in my heart that I could not fathom what I was asking for at that time. And so while I'm asking these things, God is preparing to answer these things, but not in a way that I thought. Because I'm hearing all of these well-meaning, charismatic prophets and apostles talking about how Jesus walked through their wall and came and touched them and took them to heaven and delivered them of all of their sin, removed all of their separation from their life. And after this touch from God, their life was magically better. They were perfect. And so that combined with reading my Bible through this lens of miracles and moving into something that could just happen in a instant, I began to think that my way to that was potentially going on a water fast or a Jesus fast. And I saw in the Bible that Jesus had fasted 40 days, and I was led into this, and I didn't know if I was going to go 40 days or not originally. I'm like, I'm just going to start and see what happens. And it was shocking because after day 3, my hunger went away. And I was flabbergasted because the first couple days I was a little bit hungry, but then on day 3, I just wasn't hungry at all. And from a nutritional standpoint, I had been doing ketosis and intermittent fasting for a number of months, about 6 months before that. So I had prepared my body and my pathways to be able to seamlessly transition into an extended water fast without all the detox symptoms, without all of the struggles that it would take to come off a standard American diet that is high in processed food and carbohydrates. And so I was able to seamlessly transition in, and my hunger went away. And then on day 4, I noticed that lust went away, and I dealt with lust for like 4 or 5 days because when we fast, we're actually raising our vibration up through our energy centers. We have 7 energy centers. Chakras, as they're called in the East, seals, as they're referred to in the book of Revelation. And so these energy centers or seals are actually energy portals in our body that correspond to different organs. And the lower energy centers are anchored in this physical realm. They're anchored in the flesh, right? So lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, the pride of life, sex, food, hunger, and ego, essentially. And so I was going through, and then on day 6, it was like all this pride and stuff started to come up, and I worked through this pride, and it was like, bam, after day 6 or 7, it's like the food hunger left, the sex hunger left, and then the pride hunger left. And it was like I was just in this place that I had never experienced before. My frequency had raised out of the lower 3 energy centers, and I literally just began to I did everything I knew to be true as far as how to connect with God at the beginning. So I just started praying in tongues, really going after God, reading my Bible. And I had just like consecrated myself to God in this season because I was really believing that he was going to take me to heaven so that I could encounter Jesus, so that I could be transformed from all of my sin and naughty behavior, so that I could come and begin to be a pioneer in the earth to help change the world, to win the world for Jesus, essentially. This is where my mindset was at the time. And so what was fascinating is as I went through this fast and consecrating myself to God, I began, it wasn't long before I entered into this realm where now looking back, I would call that realm heaven. But it wasn't a place separate from me. It was in my prayer closet. I was sitting in my prayer closet, drinking water for the majority of the day, sitting in, cultivating the presence of the divine. Jesus said that, those who pray go into the secret place. And when you pray in secret, you shall be rewarded in public. And so I began to commit to this principle and go within myself. And I stopped all of the praying in tongues and praying and doing the word and worshiping and all these external acts that I were doing. They eventually just felt dry. They felt like nothing was really happening. I felt like the heavens were closed. But when I began to go within myself and the Spirit was leading me in, I began to have these elevated states of being. These kingdom vibrations of consciousness began to come into my world and really change who I was. Okay. And so from that place, I began to have all of these downloads and understandings about the nature of reality, about the truth between the identity duality. And what I mean by that is our false self and our true self, or the Bible calls it the flesh, or the sinful nature, or the divine nature, or Christ. And so I began to realize that there's this identity duality across many different cultures and many different religions. In Buddhism, it's called the true self, or the small self. In the New Age and psychology, it's called the ego, or the higher self, right? And so we begin to see that across many different cultures, many different religions, in many different parts of the globe, they all come to the same place of this identity duality that I was realizing in the Bible. And so I began to realize and get taught that the carnal mind operating system, or the ego, is literally the false separate self. But there's this other operating system that I was tapping into that I'd never deeply tapped into before, that I began to tap into because I was so far from the physical, normal, everyday life and reality, that the spirit began to flow up in me, and I began to realize a deeper truth about who I was and the nature of reality. I began to realize that I wasn't my mind, that I wasn't my thoughts. And my thoughts, most of us, me included, on a day-to-day basis, when our thoughts come up, we don't judge those thoughts. We don't think about those thoughts. We just are them. We're living in subconscious programs. We're living in that unworthiness, shame, and condemnation from our past. So we're living with our childhood programs on repeat, and we don't realize that there's a deeper essence, which the Bible calls Christ, our higher self, our true self, that is actually underneath all of the collective conditioning. So during this fast, I really tapped into that for the first time. I began to realize that, wow, I am not my conditioning. I'm not my false separate self. But I didn't have a grid for what God was showing me. I didn't have a grid for the Christ essence that was emerging in me. Okay, I didn't have an understanding that my consciousness, that my mind had to be renewed and my heart had to be gardened, and all of the worldly rocks and all of the religious weeds and all of the low vibrational programming had to come out. And so coming off of this water fast, I was expecting that I was going to change the world, that I was going to be a great revivalist, doing and preaching big meetings and filling stadiums like some of the really awesome preachers that I looked up to. During this time, the exact opposite happened. Okay, so coming out of this, I was expecting such massive things, but it was literally the opposite that happened. And this is where I really want to begin to talk about my health journey. So that was just a little bit of background leading up to this point. So coming out of the fast, I was in such a high vibration that every low vibrational pattern and programming, thoughts, belief systems, religious constructs, worldly addictions, everything came to the surface. So imagine like a pond, right? You're in a pond. Like, I'm a golfer, so I love golfing. So you hit a golf ball into the pond and it goes to the bottom. And if the pond's clear enough, because the water's still, you can see the ball in the bottom. And if you go and you grab your ball out of the bottom with the ball retriever, if you hit the bottom, it murkies the waters up. Okay. Well, our bodies are made out of like 80 to 90% water. Okay. And it turns out that water is a very powerful holder of frequency. Okay. Frequencies are vibrations. They're energy patterns that carry information. Okay. Love is an example of a vibrational energy pattern. Every time you are loved as a little baby, those frequencies are going into your baby's body and they're being held in the waters of the body. So same with negative stuff though. Every time you go through something traumatic, every time you were neglected, every time there was abuse, every time you got blackout wasted, every time something negative and low vibration came into your life, your body records that energy if you don't know how to somatically heal and release the trauma. Okay? And so I didn't realize that, but fasting is a powerful way to raise your vibration and uproot all of that lower energy pattern. So what happened? I raised my vibration up to this place that all my old false separate self energy patterns in my body came to the surface in my awareness, in my energy field, to be purged. The principle in the Bible that references this is when the Apostle Paul is talking about we are gold refined by fire. Okay, God's love, God is a consuming fire. And so we are consumed like gold in the fire. And when gold is heated up, guess what happens? All of the impurities come to the surface. All of the lead, all of the mercury, all of the toxins and impurities come to the surface so that they can be removed. Essentially, this fast that I thought was going to catapult me into my destiny was actually just the appetizer, the fire to bring everything to the surface. Okay. And so I started to begin to think there was something that was really wrong with me because I started to feel depressed after this. I started eating again. I started like going back to, continuing to go back to church, and I started to acclimatize back into normal reality. And this wasn't that easy of a task after going what I went through, because I was in a spiritual dimension for multiple days, having supernatural encounters, seeing light orbs and light flashes and a different vibrational realm and octave of heaven around me. Supernatural things happen. Like, for example, a wind blew through my closet and healed me of chronic sinusitis from all those partying years the year before. That moved my clothes while I was in there. It was quite fascinating, and it was really cool because it opened up the metaphysical reality to me in experiential knowledge that I had only read about in some of the great mystics of old who'd experienced some of these supernatural phenomena. So as I began to come out of this, I didn't realize it, but God was setting me up to deconstruct me of my old wineskin, of all my old false separate self mindsets, so that I would be able to carry the new wine. Because I didn't realize it, but as a Bible-believing, spirit-filled, zealous, charismatic Christian who was going after God with all of my heart, I thought I was the most advanced. I thought I had the new wineskin. I thought that I had everything that was necessary in order to carry the new move of God that was coming into the earth. But Jesus said you can't put new wine into an old wineskin. And I thought that I had the new wineskin, but the truth is the wineskin that was constructed in 2014, 15, 16 there, 17, those years where Christianity was my world, that was the old wineskin. Okay? And so this is what ended up happening. Coming into 2018, I really began to believe that there was something wrong with me, because all of the teachers and leaders and pastors and people around me were giving me advice in, I won't say not all of them. Everyone was doing the best that they could. Okay, I'm not pointing fingers or judging anyone. Okay, but at the time it was very confusing because I thought I was demon possessed, and some people were saying, yeah, you've got such a big calling on your life. You're going to be the devil's like resisting you and coming after you. And it isn't even about the calling. I think that just anyone as Christians, when we come to Christ, we kind of get the message, you're saved, you're going to heaven in the future. Hallelujah. But at the same time, now you've got a target painted on your back, bro. You better watch out, because now you're in a battle with the big bad devil. And being part of a supernatural school, we focused on healing the sick and casting out demons. And so I would go into the streets and I would pray for people, and I had seen demon manifestations. And so I knew that these things were real, and I believed in these demonic entities that were attacking me, and I was constantly in a war, blaming the devil. And it was this process where I was just in a war mentality, and I was struggling and striving and trying to prove myself, trying to perform, trying to outwork, because once again, my childhood programming was you're not good enough. And so religion gave me a gateway to channel that you're not good enough energy to try to become something good enough so that I could be like my favorite preacher, so that I could be like who I thought were the highest level of consciousness and the best people to emulate on the planet. Okay? And so I started really going after that, but the more that I went down that road, the more that my life began to become worse. And I was never planning on deconstructing from Christianity. I was never planning on leaving behind the foundational, some of the foundational, I haven't left them all behind, but some of the foundational belief systems and structures that we so know and loved in Christianity. And so what ended up happening is I started to have crazy symptoms in 2018. And I'm going to explain this from multiple different angles. First, I'm going to explain it in a spiritual way. And then I'm going to explain it in a physical way and mentally and emotionally. And you know what? I'm not going to be too left brain about it. I'm just going to let the spirit flow and explain it the way that it's meant to. But I want to let you know that there was multiple facets. It was a multifactorial situation of this terrible, grotesque healing, breakdown, deconstruction, dark night of the soul, wilderness season that I went through that I would not wish on anybody. Okay. And it had a multi-pronged approach, but at the beginning and in the mindset that I was in, I thought it was all spiritual. I thought it was the demons. I thought it was the devil. I thought it was all of these things attacking me. And so I was fighting back. And there was only one leader actually who told me you need to renew your mind. And but they didn't really have any tools for that. So they just said, read your Bible more. You need to believe the word, get in the word more and read your Bible more. And so I was doing that. I was reading my Bible hours a day. I was praying hours a day. I was doing all these works to try to get delivered and try to feel okay in my heart. Cause I was really, really depressed, really anxious. I was starting to gain weight. I was feeling really bad. And during my fast, I forgot to mention, God said, you need to lay down your business. And I was just starting this health coaching business. I'd been certified as a fitness trainer. I just won this North America-wide body transformation contest a couple years prior. It was just such a passion of mine to help people with health and nutrition. And so I started to do that, and that was starting to pick up a little bit. And God's like, lay that down. And I was like, why? He's like, because you need to learn to give yourself to be loved by me. And so I didn't know what that meant, but once again, it was this breadcrumb trail leading me into this new wineskin. So as I start to deconstruct, and I lay down my business, and then a prophet mentor of mine calls me and is like, yo, Daniel, you need to lay down your ministry. And I thought he was calling me about, he's like, I'm here to talk to you about your ministry. I'm like, yeah, like it's about to launch, right? He's like, no, you have to lay it down. God's saying you have to lay it down for at least a year or two and allow yourself to be loved by God. And I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. And so I drove 3 hours to this small town where he's the pastor of this church. And I just decided to be with him, to pray with him for the weekend, to get clarity and guidance on what was going on. And he's a very seasoned prophet. He reminds me of Gandalf, who's very, he's walked through the trials and tribulations. He's been through a lot. He's not someone who's just read a book and is preaching. He's been through it. And so I trusted him. And so I went up there because I thought he would have some wisdom and guidance. And I left discouraged. I thought that my ministry was going to launch. I'd given up my business. I laid down my ministry, and then I lost my health. So everything that I was associated with before the fast, all of my false separate self programming, that I'm a fitness person, that I'm a minister, that I'm a healing evangelist, that I'm prophetic, that I'm a health coach or a fitness trainer, or all of these mentalities and things that I thought I was identifying with as a surface level identity that we all do in the world. And there's nothing wrong with it, but God was taking me through a process to deconstruct from these surface level identities. And part of this surface level identity, perhaps that was most deeply ingrained in me, is that I'm a Christian, that I'm a spiritual being. It wasn't even a spiritual being. It was that I'm a Christian, and that I believe certain dogmatic rules and religious ideologies that form me who I am. And so through this deconstruction, as I started to go through it, everything that I thought I was taken from me. I had a freak spinal cord injury, which left me bedridden for 3 to 6 months in excruciating pain and sciatica. I thought this was an attack from the devil. I was brushing my teeth, and my back went out and I couldn't walk. I collapsed to the ground, and I thought it was demons and the devil, and I thought I was under attack. And I called and asked people for help, and no one understood the process that I was going in, because even though, a lot of people in the church had gone through some type of wilderness season, they didn't understand the stuff that was going through, because as I was going through this, I was going through massive bipolar states too, manic depression, very high highs and spirit-filled excitement, but then very low lows and not wanting to live and wanting to die, essentially. I would never take my own life, but I was at the place where I was asking God to take my life. So I was kind of in the middle of this Job type experience where I basically lost everything that I thought I was and everything that I wanted to be. Um, and most of all, I was really angry, really, really angry at God because God had not shown up to deliver me and fulfill all of the prophetic words that He said I was going to have. Me and my wife had a lot of prophetic words that we were holding on to. And now we still do. But during that time, the exact opposite happened. And so it was very disheartening. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but promise fulfilled is a tree of life. And so I began to realize that God puts us in these seasons. We go through these trials, these dark night of the soul, the wilderness season, in order to change our heart condition. And in order to change our heart condition and allow us to come into union and right alignment, righteousness, right alignment with our true self, we have to strip away the illusions and the layers of all the false self-programming. Okay. And so from one layer on this spiritual level, I thought I was demon possessed. I thought demons were coming after me, fighting me. I was going to deliverance ministry after deliverance ministry. I was confessing all of the stuff, all the wrong stuff from my past for the 10th time. If I picked my nose before the meeting, I confessed it. Okay. So it was one of those things that I wanted to be free more than anything else. And I always left more messed up. I always left more just not knowing what was going on, more confused, more broken, more messed up, and nobody seemed to have answers for me. And so I just basically retreated into my house to die. I was in my bed in excruciating pain for 3 to 6 months, and I really had a glimpse of how deep human suffering can go. It was, I wish it on nobody, like not my worst enemy, to go through something like this where your identity and your physical body and your mental state is in such confusion and disarray, and you don't know who you are and you don't know what's going on. Maybe you can relate if you've been through a season where you came out and it was so traumatic, so intense that you literally didn't know who you were and you didn't know how to live anymore. That's what 2018 was like for me. And during this, before the back injury, but while it was beginning to start, I went to India. And I wanted to preach some crusades at India because I was still really zealous about trying to make this calling happen for myself. And I went with some well-known evangelists and pastors from Canada and the United States. And while I was in India, I started to have extreme dissociation episodes. It was a combination of the stress of having to go up and preach in front of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of people online when I wasn't ready. And the weight of that pressure began to expose the cracks in the foundation of who I was, of my identity. On top of this, I didn't realize it, but just in the last year or so, through my healing journey, coming into amazing health in my body, I'm in the best health I've ever been, and I've sustained it now for a while. And it's so important to detox our body on a physical level. Okay. I had a root canal done and I still have it, but I've realized that there was a lot of toxicity and bacteria from the root canal that was causing dissociative disorders, high mercury and high metals in my blood, all sorts of different toxins, parasites and different things. I spent tens of thousands of dollars on my health in seeing holistic and functional doctors, getting brain scans, trying to figure out what the hell was going on with me because I just wasn't right. It was like I took psychedelics, but I didn't take any psychedelics, and I was in this state of disillusion and bipolar paranoia and anxiety for a while. And it was like so bad I couldn't leave my house. And I was like flipping between that, insomnia, so I wouldn't sleep for days, go into delusions, and then like suicidally depressed. And so this was the story and the way I was living, and just literally trying to survive, trying to make it through day by day, 2018 and 2019. And then when 2020 hit and the pandemic came, it was like the collective vibration dropped to a level where I could see again. It was like the world dropped down to a frequency that I was at, and now that I could perceive, and just because I went through, when COVID hit, it was like nothing for me. It was just like a little joke. It it didn't even matter. And I'm not trying to belittle or anything. I'm just talking about my first person human experience. In that moment, I was just like really actually happy. I'm like, it's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. And I just started to get whacked. I started to have joy. I started to sing again. I started to just connect with things because I didn't know who I was. And I'm like, oh, wow, singing like that feels good. So I started singing and I got myself a keyboard and I started just playing songs. And then I realized I really like to cook. And I just started to follow the things that I really like to do. So if you're in a wilderness season right now, if you're going through a dark night of the soul, if you're going through stuff and you don't know who you are, here's a word for you. Follow something that feels good in your heart. Allow yourself to feel and process the emotions, because the process that you're going through, you're really purging the false self-identity that you thought you were. You're releasing the low vibrational toxic trauma and emotional patterns that are in your body on an energetic level. And so the dark night of the soul is the depth of perception that you are separate from God. And in that place, while I was experiencing that, it is the worst possible feeling that you can feel. And this is what hell actually is. See, in Christianity, we've been taught hell is eternal separation from God. But I want to say that heaven and hell are actually states of consciousness now. Can we experience them in the afterlife if we don't change how we're feeling now? I'm sure we can. But why not focus on what we can do right now? And so while I'm in this state and while I'm in this place of eternal separation, because the eternal life is now, this now moment is actually eternal life. John 17:3 says, what is eternal life? Eternal life is to know God in experientially. Like Adam knew Eve and birthed the son. That word is intimately. So if we are separate from knowing God, we're in separation from God and we're eternally separated in this now moment. And so I'm going through this deep separation from God, and it's terrible. My body's purging itself of all of these old traumatic patterns from addiction, from childhood, from substance abuse, from everything that I walked through in my life and I didn't know it. And as I'm going through this process, I'm also filled with heavy metals and toxins from all the stuff that I put in my body over the years. And I'm going through a massive purge and detox, and I'm on this journey to try to figure it out. And so over the years, I've literally had to dive into every facet and every corner of spiritual healing, inner healing, emotional healing, somatic trauma release from the body, into every facet of functional medicine, which led into greater expressions of understanding quantum health and the nature of reality, that we're actually electromagnetic beings at our core, and we can either increase our vitality and energy by doing and aligning to certain principles that are found in nature, or we can disconnect ourselves. You know, this goes down to food, nature, lifestyle, all sorts of different things, supplementation. There's many different modalities and detoxes that we can use to heal and seal our body, heal our gut. Our gut is connected to our brain via the vagus nerve. And so our gut is actually responsible for making 80% of our serotonin and other transmitters. So if your gut is leaky and you've got small bacterial intestinal overgrowth and parasites in your gut, they're peeing and shitting in your gut and they're releasing toxins in there, and it's causing havoc in your brain, and you're having bipolar states, you're having depression, you're having anxiety, you're having confusion and all of this stuff. And then you've got heavy metals and you've got all this different stuff, and you've got bad religious programming telling you that you're being attacked by demons, and you feel in a different realm because your consciousness isn't fully in your body, because you're having all of these toxins and things come into your life. And so if you can resonate with this, if you're going through anything like this, I just want to tell you that you're not alone, that there's hope, that you can go through this time in this season. And in fact, that every perceived setback that you're facing right now is actually a divine setup for you to level up into a greater measure of your Christ-like identity. So as I was going through this process, it was a slow, systematic process, 2018 all the way to 2023, where I began, and then in 2023, it all began to click, and I began to get healing on a level that I'd never had before. But in 2021 and 2022, I just literally, 2020, 2021, 2022, for 3 years, I literally sat and meditated multiple hours a day, seeing and feeling my emotions. Because somewhere through all the trauma of the dark night of the soul, I began to realize that Jesus wasn't coming back to save me. I began to realize that God wasn't going to walk through my wall and deliver me. I began to realize that I had to take responsibility. And in taking responsibility, I found that God gave me the ability to respond. Okay? So when we begin to take responsibility for our lives, that we stop blaming the demons, we stop blaming the devil, we stop blaming different things. Just going to plug my book for a second. My new book that's coming out later this year. It's called Jesus Never Blamed the Devil, a quantum oneness perspective on reality, manifestation, and co-creation. Okay? It's about how we live in a mirrored reality, where as a person thinks in their heart, so are they. And so all of these principles, where as a person thinks in their heart, so are they, is true. On the spiritual level, on the physical level, on the emotional level. But you can't outthink yourself from depression that's being caused from heavy metals. You know what I mean? You can't inner heal yourself out of a bad diet if you keep putting toxins into your body and inflammatory foods that are destroying your gut and jacking up your hormones. Okay? So this is a multi-dimensional approach of spirit, body, mind. We're a spirit, body, mind complex. And we have to come into divine alignment, spirit, body, mind, and we have to integrate our past trauma. We have to elevate our mindsets and our awareness to new levels so that we can bring the love and light of Christ that we're one with into every place. And then we need to calibrate in heart-centered Christ consciousness so that we can vibrate in and bring about this new earth. Okay, we are in the kingdom age of Aquarius. We're about to bring in a new earth right now. Every system on the earth is rapidly changing and transforming. We are on the verge of the split happening right now. We're going to see a new economic system. We're going to see a new spiritual system. We're going to see a new food and agriculture system. We're going to see a holistic version of each one, and we're going to see the mainstream worldly structures that we have in each one. Okay, and so as we begin to awaken and go through a spiritual awakening like this, like I've been through, awakening isn't all the unicorn and lollipops and sunshine and rainbows and shit. No, an awakening is beginning to wake up to the reality of what reality actually is. But before you have an awakening, you have a very contracted view of reality, because if you began to see the world as it was, you wouldn't be able to handle it and you'd be too depressed. You'd be too depressed to realize what they're doing to the soil and what they're feeding in GMO foods to the animals, to how they're spraying all our crops with glyphosate and all of these different things, and how many toxins are actually in the world. If the average person who's not spiritual just got a glimpse and just understood what was actually going on behind the scenes in our food and agriculture industry, and I'm not being pessimistic, please don't let this information lower your vibration so you feel alienation and separated in your mind and freak out. Okay? Allow this to empower you. Allow knowledge to empower you and sit back and be objective. Okay? So the best thing that we can do is go within, because as we go within, we realize that we're not the old story, that we're not the false separate self. Okay? To go within yourself is to go through the door. Okay? To go through the door of dimensions into the Father's house where there's many mansions. Okay? That's what Jesus said. In my Father's house, there's many mansions. I want to talk to you about earthly or spiritual, heavenly things, but I need to talk to you in earthly terms. And so in earthly terms, all we have to do to begin to move out of a low vibration is to channel our awareness and get really good at going within to our heart. Taking some deep breaths. Being very practical. Becoming aware of the things that we think and the things that we feel. Because the things that we think and the things that we feel create our state of being, and our state of being will create the reality that we're going to be seeing. We're co-creators with Christ, creating our reality. And so Holy Spirit began to teach me that I had to love myself. Jesus wasn't coming back to save me. Christ in me was flipping all of the tables in my temple that weren't in alignment with my true self. So I had to learn to partner, to align, to come into divine alignment with my true self. And every time a negative pattern came up, Daniel, you're not good enough. No matter how hard you try, you always fail. God's not coming through for you. And I just go, fear, shame, guilt, condemnation. I see you. You're allowed in my body. You're allowed to be here. Okay, so I stopped resisting my enemies. Okay, Jesus said if somebody punches you in the face, turn the other cheek. If somebody takes your coat, give them your tunic too. Why? Because what we resist persists. Okay? What we resist persists. So this is a quantum energetic principle. Jesus was the greatest quantum teacher of all time. Okay, he was teaching quantum energetic principles in the language of the day that the average person could understand. Okay? And so this is the reality of things. We have to come into the truth of who we really are so that we can begin to create a new earth. Okay? And so on my journey through this, I had to go into many different facets of reality, of health, of nutrition, of lifestyle, of emotional inner healing, of building awareness, of co-creation on the spiritual realm, of spiritual encounters and supernatural manifestation. And it's all come to a culmination point in my life now where I'm ready to begin to release this information and help those that are looking to come into divine alignment, spirit, soul, and body, to integrate the past traumas, to elevate out of poor health and lifestyle and low vibrational mindsets, to begin to stack wins, to begin to come into the power, purpose, destiny, identity, and blueprint that you know that you're created to live, that you know that you're called to do, right? And then calibrate after healing all the rocks, the weeds, the junk inside, coming into alignment in our bodies through nutrition and lifestyle and quantum modalities to vibrate at the highest frequencies so that we can begin to pioneer and create a new earth, so that you can be a partner in co-creating the new earth. And so I wanted to share this journey with you guys to just talk a little bit and talk plainly, because I've been pretty quiet about some of the stuff that I've been through and some of the things that I walked through. And really this is just scratching the surface of everything that I actually went through. But for brevity and clarity, I just wanted to touch on a couple of the main points. And so in this new kingdom age of Aquarius, things are changing rapidly. Okay, in the age of the church, the age of Pisces was the age of the fish. Jesus and John the Baptist came, and they started to pioneer a new message. They started to bring a message of salvation, of healing the sick, he made fishers of men to help heal people at an individual level, getting fish into the boat, which is a very symbolic way of saying individual salvation. Whereas in this age of Aquarius, it's a picture of a woman pouring water over the earth. Okay, and so it's no longer just about the individual fish like it was in the last 2,000 years of the church age, which many of the churches are still in, which is totally fine because not everybody's meant to come into the new kingdom age fully. But this new kingdom age is about understanding the glory of God as the waters cover the sea. It's about understanding the logarithmic vibrational realms of heaven and how we're all connected interdimensionally, that there's one spirit, one God, one Father who's above all, in all, and through all, that we're all in him and he's in us, that the only thing that's separating us is that old false self, separate self, the belief in separation. Okay, and when we're in separation, we lack. We're living by the ego, we lack. And when we lack, we attach or cling to external things. How many times have you been going through on your spiritual journey and you feel like you're lacking, just like for me, the major thing was always my health. I'm lacking my health because I had all these toxins in my body, because I had self-sabotage loops of not being able to stop binge eating on fast food and Chinese food and other addictive foods, fried foods that I couldn't stop eating. And the crazy thing is I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to feel good in my body. But I would go and binge late at night, and then I would feel like crap, and then I would shame myself and beat myself up. And then food was also my coping mechanism. So I was trying to fix myself with the coping mechanism that was attempting to fix the problem. And so when we can become aware of these unconscious patterns and cycles that we're in and bring awareness and look from a higher place, we can begin to bring a new energy. We can begin to bring a new energy. And what energy actually is, at the subatomic level, is a pattern. And when we bring an elevated pattern like acceptance to that pattern of anger or that pattern of fear, we repattern and restructure it in the quantum field to begin to pattern a new reality for ourselves and in our field. our energy field. Okay, this is what Jesus said. He said, perfect love casts out all fear. Okay, so that's the Bible's way of saying that when you change your vibration, you're setting into motion a new pattern from a higher vibration that is going to vibrate out all of the lower vibrations that you're in. So if you're caught in fear, if you're caught in performance, if you're caught in striving, if you're caught in victimhood, if you're caught in any low vibrational state of being, which is rooted in lack and separation, that's causing you to attach and cling to this diet, this modality, this way of being, and you're sick of spinning and trying, and this relationship, this personal development program, this, that, if you've tried and tried and tried, and no matter how hard you tried, it's not working out, it's because you need a new pattern. You need to reprogram your subconscious mind to pattern in a new pattern. And we do that by going in and transforming our hearts and healing all of the past trauma in our body, vibrating out the past trauma, vibrating in love, and repatterning ourselves, repatterning the water, repatterning our consciousness into a higher vibrational place where we can become aware and we are empowered to take back any self-sabotage loops and cycles that we're in. And so if this is resonating with you on any level, please reach out. I'm actually looking to help 5 different people come into divine alignment, spirit, body, mind, to manifest their greatest version of themselves, their greatest blueprint, their highest potential, so that they can take on and be part of the new earth. Okay? So if this is resonating with you at all, please reach out to me, and I would love to chat with you. I'd love to help you, and I would love to just walk with you on your journey. Help come into the puzzles of your life, come into the pains of your life. A lot of the people that I've been coaching and helping over the last couple years, I've been in the pains of their life. I've been in the deepest, darkest places. I've been in the trials with them, helping them overcome and come through, walking through the dark night of the soul with them, walking through times of them wanting to commit suicide and leave things behind, and bringing the high vibration of Christ and breaking things open. Okay, sometimes it takes one session, it takes 1 hour, and you can heal a whole lifetime of trauma in 1 hour. And then when people shift that energy vibration, they come into alignment with a higher vibration, and people get trips, people have opportunities open up. One lady, after our conversation, they were trying to sell their house sold for double. After that, her husband got a raise and they moved into a new house that was worth double the amount, literally the same week. And so it's so powerful because when we break open, and their house hadn't sold for months before that. And so when we break open our heart vibration, because at the quantum level, everything's energy. As a person thinks in their heart, so are they. Just as the face of water reflects the face of man, the man or woman's heart reflects the person's life. And so we have to deal with the heart. We have to heal the heart. And then we support the heart healing with external lifestyle, nutrition, mindset modalities so that we can begin to stack wins, kick ass in life, build momentum, and overcome the passive, weak, docile, broken, fragmented, depressed version of yourself that you know isn't your truest and highest blueprint. Okay? So I love you guys, and I just wanted to come on here and share a little bit about my journey and just extend an opportunity to step into the next season of your life, to come into the highest blueprint and best version of yourself via a coaching program, Divine Aligned Spirit, Body, Mind, where we integrate, elevate, and calibrate you into new levels of health and Christ consciousness. So I love you guys. Hope you have a great day, and shalom.